Hello and welcome back to another episode of NPC, Next Portable Console, to you and me. I'm here with a couple of wonderful co-hosts, Mr. Brendan Bigley. Hey, Brendan.
Hello, John. How's it going?
I'm doing all right. We also have, direct from Rome, Italy,
Yes.
Federico Vitici.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Federico.
Hi. I feel so out of place because both of you are so fancy today, especially
I know.
Brendan. I feel like I'm missing out on some special occasion here.
I put a tie on for this one.
We have a special back channel where, Brendan and I coordinate our wardrobes for the day.
Interesting. I have one of my dogs here with me, so maybe that can compensate on video. Maybe I hear that if you put your dog on video, it works really well for YouTube.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe at some point she's currently sleeping right next to me.
Get her to jump up into your lap.
Well, we'll see.
Dogs are not a fashion accessory in some situations as well.
Right.
As evidenced by Paris Hilton in the early 2000s. I think she really made that
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
thing.
exactly.
She really did.
Exactly. We have some follow-up to get to. We have a lot of things to cover on the show, but we have some
Oh,
follow-up.
sorry. Next portable K9. I just have to say
Oh
it.
my
Oh,
God.
there it is. There it is. Boy.
Yes. Well, Ginger is not technically portable.
done.
I mean, she weighs almost 11 kilograms,
Mm-hmm.
but it's doable. We have some follow-up to get to. I heard directly from someone at the Bazzite team. So shout out to Bazzite. We talked about it in the
Yes.
last episode. The operating system that both Brendan and I are using. Brendan on the ROG Ally X. I'm using it on the Legion Go to work with SteamOS. I heard directly from the Bazzite team on Blue Sky about the issues that I mentioned with my Legion Go sort of resetting back to 5 watts TDP. I'm just going to quote from this message that I got from the Bazzite team. The Legion Go 5 watt issue is likely to be due to overheating. The Legion Go allows you to go all the way up to 30 watts, but the cooling solution isn't really built for it, causing the device to set itself back to 5 watts as a safety measure. 25 watts or below is ideal. Thank you, Bazzite, for the clarification. I think that's exactly what was happening. I've been using it at 25 watts. Haven't seen the reset back to 5 watt issue occur any longer. So that's useful information to know.
Yeah, it's a great tip. That's a great tip. Yeah, I also wanted to mention that I was watching Joey's retro handhelds the other day, and he was going into some details about tariffs and things with, in the United States. He's based in Canada, but he did a nice job of kind of breaking down what this could mean for people who collect retro handhelds. And it could nearly double the price of something like an Anbernic $50 device, which, we're not there yet, but that is kind of what we're staring at. And I thought it's an episode worth watching just because it goes into it in a lot more detail than we did last episode. So shout out to Joey.
Yeah. I think, high level, saying it out loud, tariffs, very silly, not good. Just to get that out of the way.
Yep.
I do think if we're to deal with the reality of it and ask questions about what it means, if and when it does happen, I am curious how that changes something like the Anbernic release cycle of 12 devices in a year. Mm-hmm. That becomes less tenable for most people, even the kind of hardcore collectors, unless you're somebody like Joey or like us doing this on the internet. I think you need to really, really, really make a case for your device when you need to start charging $100 for it, and having a million things that are like TrimUI Brick size, as great as that device is, they all need to be at brick level of quality. I think to really make it worth it for people.
Yeah, and I think it might push people more to things like the Portal and kind of that next tier of Android device that are more expensive for sure, but you can get a lot more out of them, and so you're only buying one thing with one set of fees and tariffs imposed on it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. That being said, we have some news to cover, and I think, John, you wanted to start with the AYANEO 3.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by this device.
Yeah.
I'm not going to buy one, to be sure, because they
That's a good thing to start with here. Yeah.
Yeah, because look, they start at $800, but they can go up as much as $2,100. It's really
okay.
It's really bananas. But Chris Plant had a really nice story about it over on Polygon, where he called it a Steam Deck on steroids in every way. And I think that that's kind of true. I mean, the idea being that where the Steam Deck kind of struggles on some recently released games, you should be able to get more out of the AYANEO 3. But you're going to pay a really high price compared to that Steam Deck in order to get there. So I mean, I liked Chris's story. I just don't think this is a device for me or for really most people for that matter. Although if you've got the cash to spend, it is an intriguing thing, especially with those swappable controls.
Doesn't it feel so much like those mid 2010s modular Android phones that never made it to the light of day? They were.
Yes, I wanted to bring this up. Like, I think it's very cool. Don't get me wrong. I think I mean, you know me. I'm all for modularity of things. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
But is it worth it? Is my question. Like, do you really feel like whenever you're emulating Dreamcast or Sega Saturn, and you're playing with traditional Xbox or Nintendo style controllers, do you ever think, man, I wish I had spent $400 more to get a hot swappable Sega controller module?
Right.
I don't know. I think it's very cool as not even a proof of concept. They're actually shipping this thing. It's very cool.
Yeah.
But it's also very expensive.
Yeah. I can't see a world in which I recommend this to anybody. I think that's kind of where I land on it.
Same.
The people who will buy it regardless of reason and price. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of for those people. But in a world in which you are doing any kind of comparison on the internet with any other device, I think you probably land on something different. But it's cool that they made it, and there's a certain level of respect I have for AYANEO just like really going for it every time they do. And from what I hear and from what John has said on the show, but like their devices are great. When you get one of their devices in your hand, like it does feel premium. It does feel good. It's not like they're dropping the ball on that. But you know, the asking price by comparison is wild.
Yeah, it's pretty
wild.
brutal.
This is wild.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about a couple of Android phones that
I love these.
That I think
These are silly.
Are kind of showing the next couple of years of Android-based devices.
Yeah.
So the first one for €1,000. Now it's obviously a high price, but let me talk about the specs. So the ASUS ZenFone 12 Ultra, it is not technically being marketed as a gaming phone, but after you're gonna hear the specs, I think you will agree that it's absolutely a gaming phone. So we're looking at a 6.7-inch display with the Snapdragon 8 Elite and 144 hertz refresh rate display, 16 gigs of RAM for 1600 nits of brightness for a peak of 2500 nits of brightness.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And a 5500 milliampere hour battery. These are really good specs for a phone.
Yeah.
Especially, obviously, it cost €1,000. But if you consider, I think we mentioned this on the show before, just the insane amount of power that the Snapdragon 8 Elite system on a chip has, combined with 16 gigs of RAM and the headroom, the performance headroom that you get with this chip. Now, for context, in case people have forgotten, you can get these days, if we're talking about a certain Nintendo console, you can get pretty good emulation of that certain Nintendo console, even with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, Gen 3, obviously. I've seen people get decent performance with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. So a Snapdragon 8 Elite is going to be plenty for the Nintendo console. And we are seeing right now, because of that performance headroom and that amount of RAM, the Elite is the system on a chip to target Windows emulation on Android, which is another sort of growing scene that we have mentioned on the show before. So I think obviously, like, I wouldn't do Windows emulation on a phone necessarily, although there's something to be said about solutions like WinLater and, being able to run Skyrim on Android, for example. But I think looking ahead at the next 2-3 years, when the prices come down, I could see in 2027, maybe 2028, most likely, like an AYANEO Odin 3, AYANEO Odin 4, maybe, running a Snapdragon 8 Elite with basically perfect PS3 and arguably maybe in 3 years PS4 emulation.
Definitely like Wii U at that point as
Wii
well.
U.
If that
Yep,
emulator
yep.
keeps improving at the rate it's improving.
So that's sort of the path that we're on, and I think it's these phones are obviously very early to market with these specs and these prices, but that's the trajectory I think that we're gonna see.
Yeah.
Also from ASUS is a new edition of the ROG Phone 9, the ROG Phone 9 FE. Do we know what FE stands for? It's not Founders.
Ferrite.
It's not Founders Edition. That's a different thing.
No.
So it's basically a little less powerful than the ROG Phone 9. It still has a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3.
Federico, it's for emulation. That's what it is. FE for emulation.
Oh my God. For emulation.
Perfect.
It's for emulation. So we're looking at a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, 165 hertz refresh rate AMOLED display, 16 gigs of RAM, and air triggers on the side for gaming. This is more of like not as cutting edge as the these names, the Zenfone 12 Ultra, but more affordable, still incredible specs. I think on Android, if you're looking for like emulation these days, you have so many options at so many different price points. I will be curious at some point. This is not something that I've done yet. I will be intrigued to see, because we mostly focus on the Snapdragon performance on the show. I will like to test in the near future what high-end emulation looks like on the Google chips, on like the Google Tensor chips that they have on the Pixels. That's something that I haven't done, and I know for a fact that those are not as performant as the Snapdragons, but like I don't know. Like, is the latest Tensor equivalent to a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, Gen 2? Like, is that enough for GameCube? Is that enough for Wii emulation? I'll follow up at some point on this.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Just looking at this article, by the way, it looks like there's an ROG Phone 9 Pro also, and the only thing that really changes looks like battery size and storage size, but everything else is the same.
And the ROG Phone 9, I think this year they gave up on that thing that they were doing on the back. Like the back of the phone last year had like the weird LED thing. Yeah.
Didn't you have that phone at one point, Federico?
No, I had, which I sold, the Red Magic. What was it called?
I thought it was, for some reason, I thought it was an Asus phone.
Red Magic, they now make I think it's called the Red Magic Nova, which is an Android 10-inch gaming tablet. It looks really good, but I love my Legion Y700, which in the Western market
is back on sale,
back on sale and immediately out of stock, I think, again.
No, it was back.
Okay,
I looked at it yesterday. I did not pull the trigger though. I'm still thinking about it.
So in the Western market, it's going to be called the Legion Tab. It's the US and European version of the Chinese model that I have, which I absolutely love. It's the perfect Android tablet.
Legion Tab Gen 3 is what to look for on the Lenovo website.
Thank you. Brandon, what is going on with Retroid?
This is so exciting.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I agree.
This news has got all three of us super excited.
Yeah. So quick background. Retroid, a couple of years ago, around the end of the Retroid Pocket 3 life cycle, released a thing called the Retroid Pocket Flip, which is basically just all of the stuff from the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus crammed into a clamshell. I have one right here. I bought this thing.
Nice.
I love it a lot. It's pretty weird. It's a weird device. You can see from the yellowing on this analog stick that I have used it a lot versus the other one. But it is, for all intents and purposes, just a Retroid Pocket 3 that closes. It has some pros and cons. I think one of the main things that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way was the fact that the shoulder buttons kind of like flare out in a way that makes it not as pocketable as you would want. Like it always feels like you're caught on stuff. It also doesn't have a home button anywhere, which means you can only use the touchscreen to navigate Android.
Oh, that's too bad.
And those two things in particular always made me think, like, maybe they'll make a second one day. Like, these are obvious flaws. Maybe they'll make a second one. And it's been a long time.
Didn't they have issues with the hinge at one point too?
Yes,
for some people?
If you got, I mean, this is kind of classic. everyone kind of goes up in arms about the hinge, but if you ever buy anything that is transparent and has a hinge on it, it is likely to break. Transparent plastic is more brittle than not transparent plastic and always will be. So the watermelon version of the Retroid Pocket Flip had a tendency to break initially. The hinge didn't work. And then they fixed it pretty quickly, I think, in like the next batch. They shouldn't be breaking at all. Let me say that. But they fixed it pretty quickly, to their credit.
Right.
And I have not had any issues with this. This has come with me literally all around the world. And at this point, it's basically just a clamshell PSP for me,
Nice.
which is pretty fun. I actually removed every game off here except for PSP games. So been having a good time with it. Anyway, Retroid teased last week, or towards the end of last week, they teased a Retroid Pocket Flip 2, a thing that had been rumored for a while, a thing that I think a lot of different retro handheld spaces were kind of, getting excited about and have been excited about for a long time, and, coming up with like, what's your dream version of this? And man, it seems like it's the real deal. So they announced it in an image that just showed the Retroid Pocket Flip 2, along with a kind of secret vertical handheld, which I think we should talk about in a second. But we now have more information about the Retroid Pocket Flip 2. It seems like, they haven't said what chip is inside, but it seems like it's just going to be the Retroid Pocket 5, but crammed into a clamshell this time. It has really nice looking analog sticks. It has an OLED screen. It seems to, first of all, it has a home button, which I'm very excited about. So no more needing to try and do swipe commands right on top of the hinge and getting your finger caught. I also love that they showed that it has a lanyard hole.
Yes.
And then also has like very active cooling, which is interesting.
Yeah.
That's not a thing I ran into here at all, but like I'll show you. They did have that also.
Yeah.
In here. It looks like a great device, honestly. I think the like positioning of the controls is a little weird, and I think a lot of people are gonna find it weird. So like this also looked weird. The original Retroid Pocket Flip kind of had this like very widely spaced control scheme, and what they're doing with the Flip 2 is just kind of pushing everything towards the top, so it's a little bit closer to like the GPD
Yes.
clamshell
Yeah.
devices.
Yeah.
But I mean, this thing is great. This is very exciting. I think for the three of us, this is like kind of a dream. And as long as it feels as good as it looks, I think this is going to be a really big deal.
I wasn't that into the Retroid Pocket 5, which I got and sold. But if this is a clamshell version of a Retroid Pocket 5 with an OLED display, this is basically approaching like dream level scenario. Like, yes, it's a good performance, OLED screen and clamshell. Yes, sign me up.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I'd be more excited about is if the Portal did a flip version that with all the
yes.
specs.
An Any Odin Portal.
And
Yeah.
well,
Flip, yeah.
that if clamshell becomes like the hot new thing, I think we mentioned on the show before that maybe the next frontier for handhelds was going to be more clamshell form factors and DS style form factors.
Right.
Yeah.
I could see like an Odin Flip or an Odin shell, whatever they want to call it. Like that'd be fascinating.
That would be really cool. It's funny to see people online being upset that the Flip 2 doesn't have two screens. I mean, I don't know. I'm not surprised really, but I mean, I'm very excited about it. The idea of taking a device with that amount of power with you in a clamshell form factor that you just throw in a bag would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean the two screens thing really just comes down to like the emulators that exist right now on Android are not really built to support two screens in any meaningful way. I mean, they kind of are. Like some people have kind of hacked their way into it and stuff, but it's not prevalent enough to build hardware around. And it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing where it's like somebody's going to need to give first. But I think. Yeah, I don't think we're going to see two screens. We've talked about this in the past. I think we're going to see kind of something closer to the 2DS first.
Yeah, and with the DraStic news that we're going to cover in a minute, things are not exactly going in the right direction.
Guess who's the only company with enough money to throw at a problem that actually did a handheld with two screens?
Yeah, AYANEO. Yeah,
obviously, AYANEO don't care. They're just two screens is a problem. Nah, it's not a problem for us.
Can we just mention real quick? So they also have this vertical device up in the air.
Right.
If it's also a clamshell or not, I'm guessing not. I think it's going to be closer to like a Game Boy DMG thing, but also have the Retroid Pocket 5 specs in there. Just at least based off of the very little we're able to see of it, I don't think that's going to have a hinge on it. But if it did, I mean, game over. That's going to be nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really would be. It really would be. It's impossible to tell from that image whether there's a hinge or not. I kind of tend to agree that I don't think it will, but we can dream for now.
I'm also fascinated by the aspect ratio of the Flip 2. That doesn't look like a 16 by 10 to me. I have no idea what aspect ratio that is. It's like it almost looks like a 16 by 12 or something, which is not a.
Yeah, it doesn't look like 16:9 either.
It's
really,
not 16:9.
No.
It doesn't look like 16:10.
That's interesting.
I have no idea what I'm looking at. Maybe it's just a render thing. I don't know.
It might just be the render.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, I'm trying to. I'm gonna do a little digging. I'm gonna do a little digging.
Okay. All right. What is the Powkiddy V10?
It's just another Powkiddy device. It looks a lot like some of their other vertical devices. It's new. It's going to be $55. They're taking pre-orders right now. It just kind of dropped out of nowhere. It's 3.5-inch IPS display. It's got a 5,000 milliamp hour battery and it has an all-winner CPU in it. So it's I don't know that it's a lot different than some of their other devices, but it is a bit of an update.
We didn't talk about Powkiddy a lot on the show.
No, we haven't.
I think my impression here is that they're sort of like weirdly positioned in between the likes of Ambernick and Retroid. Like they're making. I mean, I really like the RG. What's it called? The RG30. The square shaped.
RGB 30?
RGB 30, yeah. But the RG Cube from Ambernick was obviously I found it to be much better, more comfortable, smaller, running Android. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Powkiddy because on the one hand, I appreciate that they make a lot of pretty accessible devices with pretty good performance. For the price, you can spend $55 and you can possibly emulate all the way up to PS1, which is not too bad. Even PSP, arguably.
Yeah, it's 640 by 480.
But they're maybe more like the niche company of all the companies that we cover. Is that just me who feels about it this way?
I honestly, this is maybe mean, but I just think they're the less successful one.
Yeah.
I think they're trying, they're throwing stuff at the wall, and it's just kind of not.
Yeah, they're
always hitting.
Yeah, a little less innovative, I think. I mean, they're fine. I think they're closer to the Ambernick end of the spectrum than anything else, but most of their stuff is not super exciting, I don't think.
Yeah.
Okay, I have findings for you.
Okay.
Oh, yeah?
Thank you.
Just loose findings.
Did you do Photoshop?
I did. Yeah,
Okay.
I did some Photoshop kind of perspective magic. This looks like, which is bizarre, a 2x1 screen.
2x1,
What?
huh?
Yeah,
A 2x1 screen.
which is interesting.
That way you have black bars no matter what. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know what the reasoning behind that would
A
be.
2x1
but
screen.
Yeah,
Huh.
yeah, it's strange. It's roughly that. Maybe there's a different aspect ratio that I'm missing. But it seems like it's close to 2x1.
Fascinating.
huh?
And that could just be a weird render, as we're saying.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Huh. A 2x1 I was not expecting 2x1.
No, me either. I checked it 5 times.
Yeah.
It's just,
John mentioned the DraStic news. So DraStic is a Nintendo DS emulator for Android that has been pulled from the Google Play Store. It's gone from the Google Play Store. I saw that there were plans for the developer to open source DraStic. I haven't seen any open source announcement. So at this point, the emulator seems to just be gone from the Play Store, right? Unless you guys know
I think that's right. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that there was talk that it was going to be open sourced by the developer, but it was pulled from the store with almost no communication. I think that there was some note there's some link somewhere that said, oh, this thing's no longer available, but there's been nothing more than that.
Can I share with you both and the audience my sort of worst case scenario concern?
okay.
I'll just do it.
Let's get sad.
Okay. My concern is that Nintendo is gonna offer native DS emulation on the Nintendo Switch 2, and they're going after DS emulators.
Yeah. I think that's yeah.
I think it's a reasonable theory. It's not really a conspiracy
Especially,
theory.
no, it's not. It's not a. I don't think it's a. Well, it's a little conspiracy adjacent. But and Brendan did a video like with the mouse mode.
Yeah.
It opens up the possibility for like emulating the Nintendo DS stylus in theory. And obviously
one of the interesting rumors I keep seeing is and I don't know if there's any way to verify this, but from some kind of leaked testing files, there are 3 different power modes that the Switch 2 is able to run in. One of them is handheld, one of them is docked, and there's this third one that is like unlabeled. And people are thinking that it's some kind of cable that attaches from the dock to the Switch 2 and allows you to be both on one screen and the other simultaneously.
Okay.
Which in my eyes enables like holding.
That would also explain the multiple USB-C ports.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
On the top.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. I totally missed it.
Games.
I totally missed this rumor. Is that a recent thing?
It was a couple weeks ago.
Interesting.
I only saw it from one source, and I was like, I don't know if I can abide by that. But it did. I mean, same with you. Like, it clicked that into place for me with the second USB port. No. It seems doable, plausible. Yeah. I think you're probably right. I think we're going to see some kind of DS emulation this time around, realistically. And from what I understand, at least from the communication that did exist from the DraStic team, it seemed like they just kind of see the writing on the wall in some ways, and just kind of bailed. I don't think there was any communication from Nintendo about this that kind of spurned this. It was more just like, hey, I'm watching all of these other emulators get shut down. I might as well do it myself and open source it. I will say the silver lining here is this stuff is available in like RetroArch already. These are cores that you can just put on RetroArch, and it's like there are a lot of people who are already making spin-offs of all these things and making community versions. So like it's not like DS emulation is just going to go away because of this. It's just this is a big name that is now no longer on the Play Store, which is a bummer.
Yeah,
I'll
be curious to see if Nintendo does actually do DS emulation on the Switch 2. If they're actually gonna upscale DS using whatever technology NVIDIA gave them this time, because we tend to think about DLSS in the context of original Nintendo Switch 2 games.
Right.
But I think there's an equally fascinating story about that NVIDIA tech being used to upscale old games. You could do it with the raw power. Like that's what we do on Android. You just upscale. You run a game at 3x, 4x the resolution. But I could see a scenario in which it's not just necessarily the Nintendo Switch brute forcing a higher resolution, but it's also some NVIDIA tech bumping the resolution and bumping the textures altogether. Because otherwise, you're going to take a DS game and you're going to put it on a television at the native resolution with the native textures. It's going to look horrible.
It's going to look janky.
I have found in testing like every way you can play DS games from when we did our DS retrospective, DS is kind of in a weird uncanny valley when you blow it up to TV size. I think like Game Boy Advance, as proven by Switch Online, looks incredible on any screen, no matter what size it is. Small looks great, big looks great. It's wonderful. And I'm also finding that PSP looks incredible on a television. It's like right above PS1 level, kind of nearing PS2 level, and has its own kind of unique quality to it. And DS is like not quite there. It's like chunky in a way that is brutal. There are a couple of games here and there that I think stand out and look great. Like Kingdom Hearts, for example, looks wonderful on a TV. But outside of that, I think it could use a little sprucing up,
Yeah, no, I liked your theory, Federico, because it fits with Nintendo's MO too, because, this is not going to have the most advanced hardware available for handheld gaming if history is any lesson. So having some sort of DLSS upscaling that's doing it in software along with the hardware makes a lot of sense for Nintendo, I think.
Yeah. All right, I think we have some topics to cover. And I see that John has something called the microclip.
Yeah, so I'm going to show this off for everybody.
Oh, that is so tiny. Okay.
Yeah, that's the the 8-bit DOE microcontroller, which I already owned. The thing around it, though, is a clip that clips around the controller, and then a little clamp, a C clamp, that fits on the front of your iPhone. Now, this thing is another good example of how all of these solutions are a little bit hacky, because I'm using my phone for something else right now, so I can't show this off on camera. But when you put this on your phone, it doesn't lie flat on your phone. There's a little bit of an angle. And when you press on the buttons, then you're kind of bouncing off the surface of your iPhone.
Oh no.
It's not ideal. Now, this little controller, obviously a controller this size is not perfect, right? But it is good compared to something like our favorite Game Baby, which has those membranes, capacitive switches, which are barely usable. But this is a lot better. However, having it clamped to the bottom of your phone is not ideal. And it's also hacky in the sense that, like, if you use Delta, for instance, the way to get this to work is that you have to connect the controller, obviously, by Bluetooth to your iPhone. When you do that, it shifts the game the way Delta works. If you have it, it shifts the game down to the middle of the screen. Then this is in the way. So the way you deal with that is you put it in 2-player mode, and you put the second player as a touch player using touch controls, which then reshifts it back up and allows you to have this sitting over the virtual controls that are in the Delta software. So it's a little, it's a workaround. It's really what it is. So I do not recommend this, even though it is only $10. It's the 8-bit DOE clamp thing.
That's a bummer. That's
too bad.
Yeah, it does. It also feels like that's not a thing I'd want to keep in my pocket all the time. I know I'm portability obsessed of the three of us, but I just want a thing that's going to fit in my pocket, and not make me feel like a loon,
Yeah. I'm so sorry to do this to you, Brandon.
It's okay.
But I kind of wanted to share some first impressions about the Odin2 Portal.
Yeah.
That I have right here. So I got this a couple of weeks ago. I've been a little busy with work, and I didn't have time to set it up right away. But now I've been using it for the past week. And I think John has been doing the same, and I have some thoughts that I wanted to share on the show. So, I kind of want to start with the disappointments.
Ooh, sure.
Because then I'll get to the positives later. So they were not kidding. By they, I mean Russ, Retro Game Core, Joy, Joy's Retro Handhelds, and a bunch of other YouTubers. The back of the Odin2 Portal really is kind of flat. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it here. This part right here, it's like this part that goes into the palm of your hand. It's not too pronounced. It's kind of flat, and if you have big hands like I do, it can get a little crampy, especially if you hold it for prolonged periods of time. I would have preferred to get something a little more rounded, something a little more full, something more like, I don't know, I keep referring to the Odin 2 even, for example, the original Odin 2. I feel like it was a little more round shaped. The Steam Deck, obviously, which continues to be in my mind the most comfortable handheld for, especially like from a design perspective. But yeah, it's kind of flat, not too comfortable, which is why after playing with it for a couple of days, I went to the AYANEO website and I ordered the official grip, which I am now waiting for. That was also Russ's recommendation at Retro Game Core. He did a video about it, and I'm now waiting for delivery of the official grip. And so,
what's the price on that, Federico? Do you remember?
20.
It's not bad.
20.
Yeah, it's like 20
bucks,
I think.
Something like that. Yeah. But obviously, I'm waiting.
My pre-order on Indiegogo also has the grip as well.
Nice.
So
nice.
I'll get them both at the same time, hypothetically.
I got the replacement sticks and the replacement buttons with my original order, but I couldn't be bothered because these are fine. Like the sticks are fine. The buttons are fine, but they're fine in the context of like Xbox layout. I'm okay with it, but John,
they work well.
They work,
but
John,
I told you,
John
right?
was not kidding when he said those buttons are clicky. I don't know if the microphone can pick it up.
It'll probably get edited out.
They're very clicky. Now, it's not just that they're clicky, they kind of have like a hollow sound also.
I think they're banging against the shell when they come back up is what I think is
Yeah.
happening. More than
Interesting.
just the switches underneath.
Yeah, so I continue to not understand, although maybe I kind of do, I don't know. Why is it that it's only the Sony DualSense and to an extent the Steam Deck that continue to be the most effective controllers at not being noisy? Now, and I know that there's a group of people who are like, why would you want your controller not to be clicky? And there's many of us who have partners and people sleeping next to us at night, and we want to be able to play games in bed without necessarily bothering them with extra clicky buttons. Now,
I think even when you're not in bed, if you're playing with headphones or something, it can just be really annoying
It
for
can
someone
be-
else
it
in the
can be-
room
yeah,
just to
it
hear
can
all
be
this
annoying.
clicking going on.
Yeah.
it can be annoying. Now, in my opinion, the DualSense continues to be the GOAT from this point of view. Like, it's so quiet. Yes, thank you. It's so quiet. And from the research that I've done is that my understanding is that Sony used like a really good membrane underneath the buttons to attenuate the sound that the buttons make when you click them without reducing the precision of the buttons themselves. And that's maybe a discussion regarding like the cost of the components that maybe Ian didn't want to spend the money. Now, I am thinking, I'm not going to do it short term because I'm a little worried, but I am thinking, and I want to actually see if anybody has done it before me, modding the buttons just by applying maybe some electrical tape underneath to see if that improves the situation a little bit.
Yeah.
That being said, those are really my only two negatives. Because this, I think, is for me, for my taste, the absolute best handheld that Ian has ever made. Quite simple.
Yeah, easily. The screen is amazing.
The screen is amazing. The OLED display on this thing is perfection. It's so well calibrated. It's just no complaints. Honestly, no complaints. The weight, the overall weight is I think it's really well balanced. I think they've done a good job sort of balancing the weight off to the sides of the console. Like, it doesn't feel too center heavy in this part. I think they've done a really good job. It feels dense. It doesn't feel cheap. The display is incredible. I appreciate the placement of the power button and the volume buttons. I appreciate the placement of USB-C and headphone jack at the bottom. I think, I'm not too, I never use these back buttons here. I'm not too bothered by them. You can easily ignore them. Overall build quality feels great. Android is perfect for emulation and for high-end emulation like obviously PS2, PSP, high-end Nintendo emulation, like that sort of thing. But what I've been doing for the past week is streaming. And specifically, I've been streaming Avowed. There's a whole parenthesis here. I would like to talk about just how insanely good that game is. But
yeah, man,
that's
so good.
a topic for a different show. I was not expecting Avowed to be this good. But I've been, for whatever reason, this console has the best Wi-Fi performance of all the handhelds that I have, including my iPhone, including my iPad, including the Steam Deck. I don't know what it is that Ian does. And maybe it's just the fact that, like, I don't know, they have plenty of room. Maybe it's the ventilation. I don't know what it is. But with one asterisk that I'll mention in a minute, it is been the best streaming performance I've ever had, both with local streaming and GeForce Now streaming.
I feel like it's kind of it's their secret sauce, really, because there are very, very few handheld manufacturers putting Wi-Fi 7 into things. And so if you're anywhere from Wi-Fi 6 to Wi-Fi 7, this thing is perfect for streaming locally or streaming over the internet with something like GeForce Now, which I know you've been doing, Federico.
I've been doing that. It's I mean, the combination of holding something so lightweight with OLED and streaming with good performance, a game like Avowed that looks fantastic on OLED, and I'm using something so lightweight at night in bed for like a couple of hours, it's been a dream. The one odd quirk that I will mention is as of 3 days ago, I upgraded my setup at home from Wi-Fi 6E to Wi-Fi 7. I did it. I bit the bullet. I went for it. So now I have Wi-Fi 7. One of the things of Wi-Fi 7 is a feature called MLO, which stands for multi-link operation. And long story short, it means with multi-link operation, a Wi-Fi 7 enabled device, like your iPhone or an Android device or an iPad Pro, they can use multiple Wi-Fi bands at the same time. So they can use the 2.4 gigahertz, the 5 and the 6 gigahertz bands all together for increased bandwidth and increased range. That's great. And it works out of the box with my iPhone 16 Pro, and it works with the iPad Pro. I love it. Oddly enough, with the Portal, so now I have two Wi-Fi networks. I have regular Wi-Fi 7 and Wi-Fi 7 multi-link. You can create two separate networks. The router that I have lets me do it. So devices that support multi-link can use it. Other devices like, I don't know, my Apple TV, they fall back to regular Wi-Fi 7. The Portal, it connects to the regular Wi-Fi 7. When I try to connect to the Wi-Fi 7 MLO, the entire console crashes and reboots.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's an interesting asterisk, but
Weird.
kind of weird. I assumed it would just like deny me the connection, but no, it just straight up crashes and reboots.
Wow.
But I've been using the regular Wi-Fi 7 network, and it's been a dream. So I've been mostly connecting to the 5 gigahertz band, streaming my PS5 locally, streaming from the cloud. I am so happy with this thing, I gotta say.
Yeah.
And it's for now, it has dethroned my Android tablet.
Oh, really? Wow.
Because of the all-in-one package, right? Because I don't have to detach and reattach a controller every single time. I can just pick this up, wake it up, connect, and I'm ready to play.
You know, and kudos to Obsidian on Avowed for having great accessibility features built into that game, because the first thing I did was I bumped up the text a little bit because I'm playing on a smaller screen. It made it a lot more readable, but it doesn't feel cramped. The design still looks good, even though I bumped up the size of the text. And I think that that's something that more and more developers are going to have to do over time as more things like the Portal or the tablets become the devices that people are playing these on. You're not always going to be on giant, 40, 50, 60-inch TV.
Yeah, I've been playing Avowed weirdly on the Odin2 Mini a bunch.
Oh, okay.
And very thankful that I could bump up the text size.
Yes.
Because playing that thing on like a Vita-sized device, little tough.
And there
cramped.
is a lot of text.
There is a lot of text.
There is a lot of text. I will say, the Odin2 Mini, first of all, similarly, best Wi-Fi performance for streaming of any device that I own. I have landed in the same spot. That just seems, as John was saying, it's like kind of the secret sauce of AYANEO, I think, in this way with their own devices. But it's a small device, and I'm really looking forward to having the Portal in my hands because I'm pretty much saving all of the like text-heavy, talking to people-heavy quests for streaming. And I'll like just kind of bank them all and then get into bed and then like play all the ones where I just need to talk to people to like finish quests. And then if I need to do any combat, I'm like going into the living room and playing on the TV instead.
Now that I think about it, I think I know the answer. I don't think it is that AYAN has special sauce for Wi-Fi. I think it's the fact that these AYAN devices are the only devices that we have with Snapdragon inside. And maybe it's the fact that Qualcomm chips just have incredible Wi-Fi. Although no, because as I say this, I realize my Android tablet with Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 was not as good as the Portal. So it must be a combination of Snapdragon and whatever it is that AYAN does. Maybe it's the air intake, it's the airflow. I don't know what it is, but
and just the fact that they support it. I mean, most devices don't even support anything more than Wi-Fi 5 still.
Well, that being said, so I'm sure we'll talk about the Portal again whenever Brandon gets his Portal.
One of these days. It's not looking good based on the shipping calculator, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah. We also wanted to talk about our good friend, the TrimUI Brick,
There they are.
before we
Ooh.
go.
We're
You
all
got
holding
yours,
them up.
Brendan?
Yeah, I do.
Hold
Brick
them all up.
Gang. Okay.
Yeah.
I
Great.
kind of wanted to know from you, Brandon. It's been a few weeks now. It's been not a couple of months, but kind of.
Yeah, I think it has been. I think I got mine in
It was
December?
around Christmas, I think.
Yeah.
It was right before
I only had it for a
Christmas.
couple of weeks before we did our Hody episode.
Yeah. So how's it going so far?
I love it still. I'm still using MinUI on it. I haven't changed anything else. I'm waiting for cross mix. I think that's the thing that everybody's waiting for. There's a custom firmware for the TrimUI Smart and Smart Pro called cross mix that is basically just like the stock operating system, but shade down. It's essentially like Spruce for MIUI device for the MIUI A30, but on the TrimUI side. But I'm still using MinUI on here, and not only that, but I am using a like modified version of MinUI that adds in a couple extra consoles. So I have DS emulation on here as well now, which is great. I mean, I'm having an amazing time with it. I think this is like still, if anyone came to me and said, what is the like budget kind of device that I should just have as an everyday carry, I would recommend the Brick over anything else, probably 10 times out of 10. I think it's an amazing device. And honestly, like, not to discount our incredible work on that episode, but I think if we went back in time and did Hody again right now, I would probably say that the Brick is like closer to the top of my favorite devices of last year.
Yeah, I think
But you guys didn't really get
that's
to
right.
talk about it as much, so I'm more curious where you're at.
Yeah, for me, it's the build quality of this thing. It's so much. It's head and shoulders above some of the Anbernic devices, I think. And the screen. The screen is it has basically no bezel on it. It's incredibly bright. And whereas I found at one point that 3.5 inches I thought was my minimum size for a screen on one of these devices, this device changed my mind because it's so crisp and so bright and so colorful that it's not a problem to me that it's less than 3.5 inches. So and I think too the shoulder buttons are a big plus here too, because they don't get in the way of putting this in your pocket or get snagged on anything. That's another big benefit, I think.
And they
too.
feel so much better than the MIUI Mini Plus shoulder buttons.
Yes.
In like a huge way, which I think is it's a big boon for this device over that one. The menu. I think the MIUI Mini Plus, one of those all-timer devices. Personally, I feel like it's completely dethroned by the Brick, though. I mean, I would rather use the Brick 9 times out of 10.
I actually kind of like the metal back to it too. I know it gets a little bit warm, but I like the fact that it's back there. It's dissipating the heat, and I think it just kind of gives it a little bit of a classy look to it that some of these other ones don't have that are just fully plastic.
Yeah. To answer your question more directly, though, Federico, I think it's worth it. If I lean back, I can show you. Here.
Okay.
Is my MIUI Flip, which is just kind of sitting on a shelf as like a display item now, because I've kind of gone back to using the Brick as the one that I carry with me. I will say, big asterisk here is that I'm playing a lot of PSP stuff every day now, so the PSP is kind of the device I'm bringing with me every day as I'm continuing to prep for that into the Aether episode. But if I'm bringing a retro handheld with me, it's going to be the TrimUI Brick.
Interesting.
I got my PSP between the last episode and now. Yeah, so I've got mine. I'm using it. We'll all talk about the PSP soon enough. But I'm having a lot of fun with it too.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about this soon enough. For the Brick, I just wanted to share that I really, really love this device for Game Boy and Super Nintendo emulation. Mostly, that's what I've been doing. Been running MinUI on it, and what I find so impressive is that the ability to save your state with MinUI and the Brick, when it goes into this like very, very low power consumption, it basically like shuts off. I picked it up yesterday after a couple of weeks, booted it up, and I was back playing Chrono Trigger exactly where I left off a couple of weeks ago. Like it's been perfect, and it's so the fact that it's so portable. I love that the screen is almost edge to edge, and it's so crisp. And it's basically like a dedicated machine for retro emulation, because like those types of consoles I don't want to emulate on something like the Portal, for example. The 16:9 form factor. always looks kind of weird, and you don't really want a wide.
It's so big too.
You don't really want a widescreen patch, Game Boy or Super Nintendo games.
Yeah.
Even if it was technically possible, it doesn't really make sense. So as a dedicated handheld, like this has replaced all the others for me. It's I prefer it to the Flip, even though yes, I need to be a little more mindful when I put this in my pocket or when I put this in a bag, unless I'm putting a case on it, but I'm not.
The screen is exposed, yeah.
But for the price, I could see a scenario in which, like, maybe in a year, this is all a little banged up, a little scratch. I'm just gonna get a new one.
Yeah.
Like I just don't want to think about
Maybe
it.
in purple.
Maybe in purple. But although I gotta say, I mean, look at this aesthetic that I have.
The white is so good. I love the white.
This. I mean, this is so nice. So yeah, I shout out to the Brick. It's
Shout out to the Brick. Hey, it's amazing, and it really honestly, the more I think about it, the more I use it. It's like even people who come to me saying like, "Hey, should I get an analog pocket?" I'd be like, "No, man, just get the." It's like, what if you had the analog pocket but smaller and it ran more stuff?
Yeah, it costs like a quarter of the price.
Exactly. It's like, I don't know. It's just so many wins with the Brick, and I think like truly, and this is maybe a more saccharine thing to say about it, but I think it really proves that a handheld developer or manufacturer can just like go to the basics and just make a very good handheld that like knocks the basics out of the park, because there's not a lot that's like super inventive about this device.
No.
They just got everything right, and that's what makes it stand out. Every device I think we talk about and anyone else talks about on the internet, there are all these trade-offs. There are all these like, well, the screen's not great, but the buttons feel great, or the buttons are too clicky, or the hinge snaps in half, or whatever. This is just it's just good.
It's just good.
It's just good.
Yeah.
There's really no downsides that I can think of whenever I use it. Even the heat problem I don't really deal with. So yeah.
It's just
It's
good.
just good.
There's nothing to say about it. It's good. It doesn't cost a fortune. It's small. It's good.
That's the Brick.
That's a Brick for you. It's good.
Yeah.
And I think that's it for this
think it is.
episode. I think we did it.
We made it through another episode.
Go team.
Shout out to
All right.
us. Yes.
All right, everybody. We'll close it out there. You can find Brendan over at wavelengths.online. You can also check out his YouTube channel and find him on social media. Just go search for Brendan Bigley. You'll find him wherever you get your social media delights. Then, of course, you can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. We do a bunch of other podcasts like App Stories too, and Mac Stories has a YouTube channel that you should check out. That's where we happen to be with NPC, in fact. And Federico is on social media as @Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHWS. Talk to you later, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening.